Hi, I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh. In over 20 years of practicing both Western medicine and Eastern healing traditions, the most important thing that I've learned is that healing is a journey we take together. So on this podcast, I'll be demystifying Ayurveda and other integrated medicine, showing how these simple, ancient practices are the keys to unlocking a healthy modern life. We are all healing catalysts because healing starts within. It starts with you, and it starts right now. Episode number 134. Well, hello and welcome back to the show, my beautiful friends. I want to start by saying thank you to all of you. Thank you for being here every week with me on the Healing Catalyst podcast. And if you're new, welcome. I am Dr. Avanti, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. I know that all of you could be listening to any show right now in the huge world of podcasts, and you're choosing to listen to mine. I don't take that for granted for even a moment. I'm so honored that you are choosing to be here with me, allowing me to be a part of your healing journey. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do that right now. If this show has helped you, please take a minute to rate and review the show and share it with a friend or a family member. Your reviews and sharing is what helps this show grow and reach more people who need this information. Thank you again for listening each and every week. Okay, so let's get back to today's episode. Let me ask you a question. When you think of a healthy lifestyle, what comes to mind? Maybe it's using food as medicine, or exercising and moving your body every day. Or maybe it's getting a good night of sleep and finding time to rest and relax. And those are all correct answers. But did you know that your wardrobe can also impact your well-being? In 2012, researchers Adam and Galinsky introduced the concept of enclothed cognition, which suggests that clothing influences mental processes, behaviors, and emotions. The study found that wearing specific clothing, such as a lab coat by a doctor, can actually enhance their own cognitive performance, attention, and focus due to the symbolic meanings associated with the clothing, indicating that what we wear can really affect our psychological state and our performance. When I read this study, I started thinking about the connection. How do our clothes affect our health? And to dive into this topic, I asked a friend of mine, designer Maria Pinto, who brings over 35 years of experience in the fashion industry, to join me and talk about this topic. Maria Pinto is a visionary fashion designer, artist, and business leader, and her passion for art and fashion were evident at even a young age in childhood. Her dedication to art led her to study both fashion and fine arts at the prestigious Art Institute of Chicago, where she was then awarded an honorary doctorate in 2017. Her journey in the world of fashion began with an internship in New York City under the guidance of the renowned women's wear designer Jeffrey Bean. Upon returning to Chicago in 1991, she launched the Maria Pinto Luxury Collection, which was sold internationally and at high-end department stores such as Bergdorf Goodman, Barney's, and Saks Fifth Avenue. And in 2007, she famously dressed Michelle Obama. Today, as a fashion futurist, Maria continually seeks new ways to innovate and make fashion more accessible. Her, quote, deconstructed couture method allows her to provide the style, the fit, and construction of luxury couture with the comfort and function that women need and desire every single day. In our conversation, Maria and I explore how the clothes we choose significantly impact our mental well-being and our self-confidence. We dive into the seductive, constructive, and destructive aspects of fashion and how being intentional with our wardrobe choices can lead to a more empowered and healthy life. Maria also provides valuable insights on how to curate a wardrobe that not only looks good, but also feels good. We also discuss the importance of sustainability in fashion and how making deliberate, kind choices in what we wear can support our overall health and confidence. So, Get ready to rethink your relationship with your wardrobe. Whether you're a fashion enthusiast or just someone looking to boost your self-confidence as you go out and make a difference in the world, this episode is packed with practical tips and profound insights that will inspire you to view what you wear in a whole new light. I'm so happy to share my conversation with Maria Pinto about sustainable clothing that can boost your health. My friend Maria, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my God, it's such a privilege. Thank you, Avanti, for considering me.
Oh, no, absolutely. I was actually at your TEDx talk here in Chicago in May, a few months ago, and you did such a beautiful job on your TEDx. But, more than that, I thought that the subject of your TEDx talk was so compelling and so interesting. And I started thinking, wow, this is something we need to talk about on the podcast. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today. So again, thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad I provoked this idea because I was hoping it would be a bit provocative to make us think about things a little differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You really got me thinking about, these ideas of seductive, constructive, destructive, these words. And I had never really thought about them that way in the context of clothing and fashion and, image and how we present ourselves to the world. So I just was really interested, and I sort of started thinking about the connection between what you were talking about and our health, our mental health, our self-confidence, those types of things. So that's really what I want to kind of dig into today. But maybe let's start before we dig into all of that. I would love for you to just, share with our listeners, because many of them may not know you. You are a celebrity here in Chicago, a designer who's been here forever. But just to give a little background about sort of you and how you came into fashion and designing clothing and in this world that you've been in for so many years. So let's start there.
Okay, that's a long one. I've been in the industry for 35 years, but even as a child, I was always curious about making my own clothes and art. So I've always kind of traversed the two, fashion and art. But as my career has evolved and we as women have evolved, I've tried to always stay aligned. And so I went from a luxury collection that I started in 1991 until 2010. And it was wonderful. I mean, I used the most opulent fabrics, price was no object. And it was really creatively very gratifying. But it was really serving a very particular audience. You had to be pretty affluent. The dresses started at 2000 and went up. And again, that was a wonderful experience to understand, to educate myself in terms of material, construction. And then in 2000, around like 2011, 12, I realized I really wanted to pivot and have a conversation with more women in the room. Mm-hmm. And so I stumbled on this fabric at a fabric trade show. It's from Italy and it's all machine washable. And that was the catalyst to this new collection that launched in 2013. And it's more accessible. The dresses start at 200. But more importantly, it's really about meeting you where your needs are in terms of comfort. It's machine washable, hang dry. We're time starved more than ever. Mm-hmm. And yet we want to have, and we should have, a pretty foolproof way of dressing. So it takes out some of the angst. And so, we launched this brand in 2013. And it's really all about serving women, having purpose. Form does follow function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that because you went from such, the extreme of designing these beautiful, absolutely beautiful, bespoke, luxurious, high fashion gowns for some of the biggest names in this country, including Michelle Obama. I mean, I remember that dress that you designed for her.
So let me tell you what she did wear that were really iconic. She wore one of my dresses for the speech for the DNC. Mm-hmm. When they announced that he was going to run and they did the fist bump.
Yes.
She was wearing my dress for that. And she wore my dress for the first day at the White House. Those are the three probably most iconic moments. But she was wearing my clothes all through the campaign trail.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And so you have designed, these beautiful gowns and dresses for some of the most prominent women in this country, celebrities, politicians, people in politics. I mean, it's just been incredible. And then you went and pivoted, like you said, to this very accessible line that was actually speaking to maybe not a different audience necessarily, maybe some, but I think to a different need for women, right?
Yes. And on some levels, both. You've hit it on the head. Yes.
Yeah.
And need
Hmm.
and purposeful.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what I have always thought of when I think of you and your designs is that you're really known for elegance and beauty and luxury, right? High fashion. And then this new line is also about empowerment for women and really helping them show up in the world to do all the things that they want to do. And so I think maybe this is where I'm starting to think about this idea of seductive. And so, what do you mean by clothing as a tool for seduction or the seductive nature of clothing?
Yeah. Excellent question. So, I mean, the seductive aspect of clothing is probably the creativity, the design, the beauty, or we're as soon as we see something that's beautiful, we want to touch it. We want to put it on ourselves. We want that to help us feel the beauty that we see in that garment, right? So, because we all want to be seductive, and it doesn't have to be in a provocative way. It could be in a way of like you're going into an interview and you want to seduce the people that are interviewing you so you get the job or whatever that moment is. This should be a tool to empower us, right? And it doesn't always do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think when it doesn't, it's usually because we're making the wrong choices.
Mm-hmm. Or perhaps we're looking at clothing differently. Because I think, what's so interesting about clothing is that it can affect your state of mind considerably. I know that, a lot of people who sort of are maybe critical of fashion, of clothing, they'll say, well, that doesn't matter. It's just frivolous, it's superficial, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, there's studies that have been done to show the effects of how you show up in the world, the clothing that you're wearing, and your state of confidence, your emotional health, your mental state of being, right? We know that there are links between those things, but there's still a lot of people who will say it's all superficial. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'd really like to ask you, how do you look at that idea or how do you push back on that idea that clothing is frivolous, superficial, doesn't matter?
I mean, I don't like the expression of, because the word judge is in it, but we do judge a book by its cover. We do evaluate or we form opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we meet someone, we want to understand them, right? So we kind of go, well, this is telling a bit of a story. And so why not be more deliberate about it? And anyone that thinks clothes are not relevant, I think they're being a little naive, frankly. I don't think that clothing should be that oppressive, anxiety driven thing that also happens. But to underestimate the power of clothing is being a little naive.
Yeah.
And so, how do you strike the balance where it's not about the clothes, it's about you, but do value what those clothes can and can't do for you? We're all making choices. Like we're both wearing glasses today, right?
Right.
I mean, the choice of glasses we're wearing is telling our audience something, right? I could be wearing little wire framed glasses, and I think that says something different about me. And so I think I'd like to encourage women to, again, like take advantage of it, use it as a tool. I hear a lot of women say, well, I'm being evaluated by my intelligence or my experience. True, of course. When I see a resume or when I meet someone, it's like, wow, you've done all that. That's amazing. I don't want to reduce you to wearing a bad dress.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, fashion is such a loaded gun. That's why I always say I kind of come through with this idea of it being destructive. Because if you don't play with it in the right way, it is destructive. It takes you down. It's stressful.
Yeah. No, I agree. So before we get to the destructive and constructive, I just want to hone in on this idea of seduction and sort of, because again, the word seduction can be very loaded, right? And people are like, oh, it's about seducing people and influencing or tricking people into doing certain things. It has a negative connotation. And so I really want to sort of understand, how are you using this word seductive? And you talked about this in your TEDx talk. So for the benefit of the listeners who maybe are sort of like, well, what does she mean by that? What do you
Yeah.
really mean by seductive?
I mean, that's a really important thing to clarify because I
Mhm.
don't believe in using tools in a way that's manipulative,
Right.
right? For me, the word seductive is a beautiful word. I mean, who doesn't want to be seduced? Like when you're trying to date or you're looking for in a new relationship, it doesn't have to be foul or manipulative. My interpretation is a beautiful aspect of it.
Mhm.
Beautiful clothes do seduce us. It makes us excited. Like you want to put that on to feel like a better version of yourself.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I find that in, the through line of my TED talk, those three words are really important, but I appreciate how you're challenging me on the word because I
Mhm.
do not want it to have that negative connotation at
Right.
all.
Right. Yeah. What's coming up for me as you're saying that is that you're almost using the word seduction or seductive as sort of the experience that we have when we put on a piece of clothing. It's about
Mhm.
even being seductive to ourselves of saying, I feel really great in these clothes. I almost feel like it's a little less about what the other person is going to
100%.
feel and see. It's about how we feel, and then it influences how we show up. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Absolutely. Because the first and foremost aspect of what we put on our body is for us. It should be
Mm,
about us. It should make us feel like one of my clients was interviewed for an article in Women's Wear Daily, and she said, Maria's clothes make me feel like a better version of myself. This is a
mm,
tool. I mean, I consider all of us beautiful. At the core, we're beautiful, but what we put on our bodies can also help continue to tell that story. The
right.
choices we make, the colors we wear, just those elements, like as opposed to not being deliberate about it.
Mm-hmm,
Did
mm-hmm.
I answer that
Yeah.
question right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that that's sort of, you are really using the word seductive in a very different way than most of us will first think of it. We always think of it as seductive in the sense of how it relates to somebody else. But I feel like what you're saying is, how does it relate to you? How is it making you feel and show up? That's what I'm really hearing.
First and foremost, 100%. This is all about what we need to make ourselves feel not just beautiful, but safe and feel,
Right.
like you can go into your world, into your day more empowered.
Hmm.
Clothing does do that because when you have a bad day and you put something on that you don't love, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't know about you, but you want to get home and change. And we've
Yes.
all had those moments. And
Hmm.
so I want to help women see it differently and make less mistakes and just find who you want to be. I don't care what it is. It could be very simple. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be some elaborate wardrobe orchestrated. It could be
Hmm.
very simple. I always go
Yeah.
back to Steve Jobs, black turtleneck and jeans. Whatever
Right.
it is, I think women, we have it so much harder than men. And that's why I think fashion is destructive because there's so many things that play into us. Like, as we go through every decade, where our bodies are changing, our needs are changing, our lives are changing. And so this plays into telling our story,
Hmm.
but it shouldn't be that crazy, weird, overconsumptive way.
Hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that I'm thinking about as you're saying that is that in the same way that our environment can affect us, right? The actual physical space. You're sitting right now, our listeners can't see us right now, but you're sitting in your beautiful office with beautiful paintings and objects around you. I'm sitting in my office with, all the things that I love. And it influences how I feel when I'm working. We're both in our offices, right? In the
Mhm.
same way, I think what you're saying is that, what you wear also influences how you feel throughout the day.
Mhm.
And so that is part of the seductive nature of clothing, is that it influences how you show up and how you feel and how you approach things, how you interact with people, right? I think it's the same with your
Mhm.
environment.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Whether it's your home or your office, these should be elements that lift you up. Like my home, I
Mhm.
consider my sanctuary.
Yes.
Like, whenever I get there, I just feel like calm and safe and I can exhale and,
Right.
take everything in. And if you don't have that feeling, and I think your clothes should do the same thing for you.
Yeah.
And I know it's a struggle because we don't want clothes. I mean, I'm not trying to say clothes are everything,
Right.
But I think, there are the extremes, right? There are people that take clothes to such an nth degree that they're overspending, over consuming. And then there's people that really discard it in a sense as it's not important. But I think there's a fine line between merging the two.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that comes down to also, it's not about, spending tons and tons of money on clothing. It's about how do you feel in the clothing, the choices that you make is really what we're getting at here.
Investing a little time in making those choices. I think that's where we kind of derail. And, I have the luxury of having a boutique that I control how we serve you. And I think service is so important, and that hopefully you could find a source that can align with you, that can give you the support, whether it's a personal stylist or a salesperson, but someone who's very knowledgeable. Like, we train our team, like, they need to understand you before they even show you something.
Right.
It's like, Avanti, what do you need today? You're doing a speaking engagement, or, I just need a reboot on my core basics. And so then we want to align with you and help guide you. And so choice and the time you invest in doing it. And to your point, it's not about spending a lot of money, because, to be honest, I think it's about less pieces and better selected pieces. And another pain point for a lot of people is, I don't know where we get this, I call it inherited messaging. It's like, who told us that you shouldn't spend $250 on a dress? Because on some levels, that $250 dress, if it's well selected and purposeful and well made, that should last you for a very, very long time, versus buying, 5 things for $250 that you're going to dispose of in a year. So there's all these little twitches that I think kind of really mess with women. I'm going to focus on women for today. That that really trigger things in our heads, like things our mothers told us, things our first boyfriends told us. I mean, it is so damaging. Like, it's like you got to reprogram your brain from all that stuff that you've heard and been told.
Right. And so what I'm thinking about, like, I think what you're touching on too, is sort of this other idea that you presented and that you're talking about is the destructive nature of clothing, of fashion. And so let's dive into that, and then we'll go to constructive. Because I think what you're talking about is some of the destructive aspects of fashion, clothing, of this whole world that so many people talk about when they're criticizing fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I feel like so much of it comes from bad choices. And another aspect of this is we'll probably talk, I know you want to talk about, is sustainability. And so I think the destructive side is when it gives you so much angst that, getting up in the morning, opening your closet makes your day just start in a very rattled, overwhelming way. That's destructive. It's destructive when your hard-earned money, gets thrown out in a year. That object, it has no use in a year or a season. Or sometimes, there's things that we discard that still have a tag on them.
Right.
That's all destructive, both to our personal, purpose and feeling good about ourselves, because those are not good feelings when you feel like you've made those mistakes, right?
Right.
We all have angst about it. Years ago, I read a book on feng shui, and it really helped me. It's like, it doesn't matter what you paid for. It doesn't matter who gave it to you. If it's not serving a purpose, you need to get rid of it, because it's blocking your energy fields. And I live by that. And so the more important point is how to avoid the destructive pitfalls. And it's kind of like, first and foremost, it's about knowing yourself. Like, who are you? And it's like, are you Laura? You can't be Laura Ashley one day and Gucci the next. I try to use extremes to make it like, yeah, you clearly got that idea. But so, like, hone in on, and be kind to yourself in this process. Be empathetic with yourself, because there's so much destructive messaging in terms of how we look, right? Men have it so easy. No one talks about their bodies like they talk about women's. And it's like, okay, it's like we all have this ideal of what we think and want to be. But then we are who we are, and we're all beautiful in whatever that is, not like pushing ourselves to be unhappy with what you're not and focusing on that.
Right. And so that's sort of that, idea of seductive and destructive, because when we take that to the point where we're saying, how I feel in my clothing is dependent on my body shape, my size, having certain, designs or logos or a certain type of thing or, being influenced by what we see in social media. That's all destructive. And that's sort of that idea of fast fashion of like having the newest trend or following the
Yeah.
newest trend, because that's a trend that's outside of us versus inside of us. I mean, if you like the trend, wonderful. But if you're just doing that because it's a trend and you want to fit in with everybody else, that's a whole different story. And I feel like those are sort of the seductive, destructive pieces that
That's
you're talking about.
destructive, 100%.
Mhm.
And to your point, I mean, there are cute trends that if you really like it, yeah, then
Right.
okay, play in it. But I would tread lightly because, I think there's a way to dress in a really beautiful way
Mhm.
that doesn't have to be driven by the right. Who says what's right or wrong
Right.
to wear, right? Who
Right.
do you follow? Be careful who you listen to.
Right. Right. And so how do you go from being seductive and destructive and transform that into being seductive and constructive from your perspective?
So, I mean, I think the foundational part of that is number one, knowing yourself and be kind to yourself about it. Like I'm 5'3", I'm a certain age, I'm a certain body type, I'm this, I'm that. It's okay. Love it. Be it. That's who you are.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then take the time. The constructive part is secondarily taking the time to really understand how to dress yourself. How do
Mhm.
I think that we're sometimes really not as deliberate as we should be. It's fun to experiment, but sometimes those experiments don't really align. And
Mhm.
so, there are certain clothes, everything is very subjective, right? So my opinion about what looks good on certain body types, I feel very aligned with as a
Mhm.
maker and a designer. A-line shapes are very flattering on certain body types. Easy boxy shapes are great on certain body types. Fitted hourglass shapes are great on certain body types. But you kind of have to find what that is. And it takes a little bit of experimentation, of trying clothes on. And
Mhm.
again, I mean, I wish I could give you a field guide, but certainly I know my staff in the store, they're on it. Like
Right.
I tell my team is like, or for any of us, if we go out shopping and it's not resonating, don't buy it.
Right.
Don't just buy to buy. So I think the constructive part is a little bit of an investment in ourselves,
Mm.
first and foremost. Know who you are, what you want to say,
Mhm.
and, some people love color, some people don't. It's
Right.
okay. There's
Right.
no real rules, but it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if that's really hitting it for you, but
No, it is because what I'm thinking about is something that I always talk about on this podcast. And I'm going to pull the thread to Ayurveda, right? Ayurveda is about living consciously, about living with
yes.
awareness, about understanding or even just being aware of why am I making the choices I'm making? And I think what you're speaking to is exactly that, is that it goes from being seductive and destructive to seductive and constructive when you take the time to be aware of why you're making the choices you're making. That's what I'm hearing from you, is that if you take the time to say, why do I like the things I like? What is it that
Mhm.
I need in my wardrobe? But even more, what is it that I need to feel, when I am out in the world? So I'll give a personal example of where this is coming from. I had a conversation with you maybe 2 months ago over lunch or brunch or something. And I was talking to you about the fact that, after the year that I've been through and all the body changes I've had, that I need to figure out how to dress again, because I was realizing that that was bringing me down, is that, I have a different body shape because of bilateral mastectomy and, weight loss and all these things that have happened. Also, I'm menopausal, et cetera, right? So I was finding that I was going into my closet and not finding anything to wear or not knowing what to wear. And we were talking about this, and you really encouraged me to ask people to help me and not to try and figure it out all on my own. And, to come to you to talk to you because, I have that benefit. I'm friends with you, but also to maybe ask a stylist or somebody to help me, or have, a family member or a friend who has really good style and who could help me sort through my clothes. And I think what you really had me think really deeply about was, how is that affecting me, in the sense of how is it maybe keeping me from showing up in the world again, stepping back into my life, which I think it really was. I was shying away from going out because I was like, I don't know what to wear and I'm self-conscious, those kinds of things. So I feel like what you brought to my awareness was that if I could be more aware of what is it that I need, what will make me feel good, that would influence how I show up in the world. So bringing me sort of asking me to be more aware about why I'm making the choices I'm making. Why am I not going to events? Why am I going to events?
Yeah.
Why am I only working from home? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a big transition for anyone to make.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think it's like you're saying, it's like finding the people to support you in the process. You're not alone.
Right.
And again, it's like I find words like empathy really important in these conversations. Just being patient with yourself.
Right.
Like we're not patient with ourselves. We're so harsh and judgmental about everything, especially when it comes to what we can put on our bodies. And, you mentioned choosing things you like. I mean, that's also a trigger that could be constructive or destructive. Because, there's a lot of things we all like that don't necessarily work for our body, our lifestyle, our needs. So kind of being careful of the like in terms of, okay, that's like a nice thing, but it's really not purposeful for me. And it's not going to be the most flattering thing for me. And that's a hard thing to, to say to someone. So when we say, hey, get some people to support you, sometimes you're going to just really have to be also honest with yourself, because it could be like I'm always having conversations with my staff about how do we say this to women? How do we say, you know what? That looks nice, but let me show you something else. Consider this. And then when they show you that, or when you do it for yourself, be honest with yourself. What do you think you look better in? It's hard when you have a best friend that wears certain things that you like, and then you try it on and it doesn't work or does work. So making those decisions, it's like, that's why, as much as I love the whole world of fashion, I find so much of it so frustrating and disarming and, hurtful for women.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's so much of the ethos of fashion, especially in this country, is that it's a lot of times about these unrealistic ideals that we're seeing in ads and in fashion shows and on social media. And, again, to your point that not everything looks good on everybody, and that's okay. But we've been so programmed to think that it should look good on everybody, right? And so I want to ask you this question. What I'm really curious about is, as a designer, how do you balance sort of your designs, like your design sense, your artistry, your creativity with what will translate into more women feeling good about themselves? Because otherwise it's just the same as all the other fashion houses. It's like all these clothing, these pieces of clothing that look good only on one type of body, the model that who's walking down the runway, and the rest of us are trying to look like that, but our body types are not like that. And I imagine that when you're doing that, you're also thinking about not only how is it going to fit the person, but also how is this going to affect their state of mind, their emotions, right? Because you're also wanting them to love the clothes and to say, yeah, that's going to be beautiful, or I'll feel good in that. How do you balance that? Because I feel like these are a lot of things that most of us don't think about, how difficult it is to be a designer like you, to have to take all of these different things into consideration when you're creating clothing. It's not just about sewing some beautiful designs and putting it on a model and then that's it, right? How do you think
wish.
about that?
I think because I went through that whole period of time doing, very luxury designer level, price points, and there was less concern or thought around that idea. And when I did this, when I transitioned to this collection, if you want to have a conversation with more women in the room, then you'd better be able to dress more women in the room in a thoughtful way. And I think I've always had a great deal of empathy for women in terms of self-acceptance and body awareness. And so that always played into how can I make clothes that make more women feel good about themselves?
Yeah.
My favorite thing that happens is women will come to me and say, oh my God, I get so many compliments when I wear your clothes. Like no matter where I go, I'll be getting on a plane and, someone stops me, or my husband says, here, here's my credit card. All I want you to do is buy Maria's clothes because like you look amazing. So I like to think that what we consider as like really important values here in what we design, that it plays into function and purpose
Mm-hmm.
for women.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's the DNA of most fashion houses.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you seen, because you've worked with thousands of women probably at this point in dressing them, how have you seen what they wear affect their mood, their psychology, their mental
Mm-hmm.
state? Like, can you give us
Mm-hmm.
examples of like, what do you see when you're in the store or in the dressing room with a woman? What happens there?
I mean, I think because the clothes are so, I don't know if I want to say thoughtful, they're very deliberate, that I think when women put my clothes on, they're able to embody the garment, whether the garment's not eating them up. And
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like something they don't have to think about, but they know they look and feel good. There's this inherent thing that happens. And, like I do really respect the idea of that we have gifts, right? And I know humbly, I say this, that I have a gift for creating clothes that do make women feel more empowered. And,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the cut or the color or the shape and the assortment of the offering, so that each of us could come to it and find those purposeful pieces that are super flattering. Again, it's subjective, but
Mm-hmm.
if you come my way, I'll promise that you're going to feel amazing,
Yeah.
like many of our customers come back to me with that
Yeah.
feeling. Because, I mean, you hate to link like the magnitude of like clothing to your mental health, right? But it does affect
It
us in that
does.
to that level. When someone says something like cruel, or I mean, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things about fashion that are cruel,
Yeah.
especially for women. And it's
Yeah.
painful. Like,
Yeah.
I'll hear stories and I'm like, oh my God, who would say such a thing?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
the standards of beauty, the good news is, again, part of my TED talk is we're cracking the standard of beauty wide open. And
Mm-hmm.
ladies, we're doing it together
Mm-hmm.
because, we're supporting each other in a way more meaningful and deeper way than we ever have. And I've seen this through my career.
I think what I heard too is this idea of you wearing the clothes and the clothes not wearing you. That's the first thing that
Mm-hmm.
came up for me when you were talking just now. But the other thing is, I think that there's something really powerful about understanding how you feel in a garment and not just focusing on how you look or appear, but how you feel in a garment. I feel like
100%.
that's something that you have really taught me a lot about, is really thinking about how does it make you feel? Right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
always ask me that when I've been in the store
Mm-hmm.
with you and I've tried things on. You'll at first ask me, you know, besides how it looks, how do you feel in it? And
Mm-hmm.
then you'll
Mm-hmm.
give me some thoughts, right? I think that's
Yeah.
really an important question to ask.
Yeah. I mean, because you do know, like when you put something on and it feels effortless,
Mm-hmm.
or when you put something on and you're twitching in it and things are not feeling aligned, whether, the garment's cut wrong for your body, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe the size is wrong or the style is wrong. So yeah, like it's kind of flashes to yesterday. I had a fitting and I always say to my fit model, how do you feel? How does
Mm-hmm.
that feel? Like, are you moving in it comfortably? I mean, a big piece of everything right now is about comfort. I don't care if it's for a black tie, a fundraiser. I mean, something very elegant should still be,
Mm-hmm.
there should be a element of comfort. And it should make you feel a strength, the power.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that you can be wearing your favorite, band t-shirt, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it was. It could be like 15 years old or a college sweatshirt or whatever it is. And it may not be the best cut. It may not be the best color, but you feel so good in it that the way you
Yeah.
present yourself is like, of course, it looks amazing on you, right?
Yeah.
I know that's a little contrary to what you're saying, but I mean, obviously the fit and the fabric and all that matters. But I also think that there's a piece of how do you feel? Like, how do you stand up? How do you show up in the
Yeah.
world in that piece of clothing because of how it makes you
Yes.
feel?
100%. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like a you take it back to energetic fields. There's a sort of sentiment that lives in a garment in some respects too.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think we all have, and I'd like to think that we could strive for having more of that, but we all have those pieces in our wardrobe that give you that make you just feel like special and beautiful. And, my goal is to get it to where 90% of your closet is that, not 9%.
Yeah. Okay. So before we go to some of your tips and tricks for women, because I know so many people are going to want to know that from Maria Pinto for sure, I want to just turn really quickly to sort of sustainability and how does that play into, the relationship between fashion and health and sort of this idea of constructive, destructive, and even, specifically for the clothes that you create. Now, I know I just asked you like 3 questions in one, but we'll just start there anywhere that you want to start with sustainability.
Sure. Okay. So as a brand, we're completely sustainable. We use all recycled materials that come from Italy. We use very well run factories where people are treated well. We check all the boxes as a collection and a brand. But the deeper part of sustainability that I want to instill in women is how are we sustaining things in our wardrobes? How are we making the right choices so that you don't want to throw it away in 6 months, a year, a season, a year? Like, most of my clients come to me and say, I'm like, Maria, I cannot get rid of your pieces. I will keep them, cherish them forever. That's what I want to hear. I mean, and to that point, sometimes, so how does something not sustain in your wardrobe? It could be the fact that it's fast fashion and it's not made well and it falls apart. It could be that I'm going to put it on ourselves. We make the wrong choices and we're like that. We've got to get rid of it. Like it's wrong choice. Got to get rid of it. I don't want to be reminded about it. So how do we avoid those pitfalls? Because, the average U.S. consumer throws away 81.5 pounds of clothes a year. That's a lot of clothes.
Really?
That's the average.
Oh my goodness.
And look at all these channels. I mean, Real, like these secondary channels. I mean, you could find things that are barely worn or still have price tags on them. People made mistakes, right? So how do we help ourselves avoid the mistakes? And, again, like if we're going to talk about sustainability, we've got to reduce what's going into landfills, and it's, how do we make those purchases that you will want to keep for a long time? And it's also like our collection, the fabrics are all like they're a high tech fabric. So the machine washable, hang dry, but they don't abrade. I mean, I have my first black pieces from 13 years ago and the black is still black because it is nylon and elastic. So, I mean, I think that as a maker, that's how I contribute to helping all of us be more sustainable.
Yeah. No, I love that because I think it's also, so many of the conversations are always about what's outside of us, which is important, right? How is the clothing made? What factories? And you addressed all of those. But I think this piece of our own personal responsibility in sustainability of are we only buying fast fashion? Again, there's nothing wrong with fast fashion if you can make it last longer, right? But this idea of fast fashion is that you're supposed to buy, a new piece every 3 weeks is the way fast fashion turns over. That's not sustainable at all.
So I'm going to take it back to what I know is so important to you in terms of Ayurvedics. It's kind of like food. Food is not entertainment. Food well chosen is for your health. I mean, I've been doing Chinese medicine for 30 years, and I know that there are certain foods for certain conditions. There's foods that help cool the system. As like we talk about menopause, there are foods that help cool you down. There are foods that actually heat you up. And the same thing with clothes from an Ayurvedic perspective. It's like clothing shouldn't be entertainment in the way that we've let it become. To your point, is shopping, shopping is a hobby, a sport. I mean, there should be a more deliberate act. It's kind of like going into a store, knowing you need that new pair of black pants, but you come away with a sequin sweater. I mean, it's seductive. It caught you. It's the cake and frosting theory. So, it's really easy to be seduced by frosting. And so again, this comes back to making those deliberate choices. So like when clients come in, I really enjoy, I'm not in the store a lot, but when I am, I really enjoy listening and working with women. And, I'll even pivot that for them. And I'll say, well, that's a nice piece, but you're eliminating, like when it comes to the final selection, right? They might eliminate the core basic pieces because they want that frosting piece. And I'm like, look, I recognize that you're not interested in buying all these pieces. That's cool. I just want to make sure you leave with the right ones. And I
Right.
think that you should keep the basic pieces and let go of that bit of
Mhm.
frosting that's fun to have.
Right.
It's
Right.
distracting, and that's where the, destructive part comes.
Yeah. And I think that you're so right that, again, making the analogy to food as, sort of something as entertainment and it's not that you can't get joy and have it be celebratory, et cetera. Even clothing, you can do that. But I think what you're getting at is the idea that it should not be, again, unconscious choice where you're using it to numb yourself. So shopping is a sport
Right.
to numb other
Right.
feelings, right? That's when
Hmm.
you're not aware of why are you shopping? What are you getting? How is it making you feel? There's a numbness, a numb quality to that is what I
Right.
think you're getting to.
100%.
Yeah, which I think is so important. And that's a beautiful analogy of how it plays into our health and our wellness and our emotional health and our emotional state of mind. And so I think
Yeah.
that's really important. So I always love to bring it down to, tactical strategies and tools for all the listeners. And so from your perspective, can you offer some tips, some strategies, advice to our listeners on how they can really curate a wardrobe that not only makes them feel beautiful, but supports their health, their mental, emotional, and physical well-being? What would be some things that you would suggest to people?
Again, I would take a very deliberate path towards what you acquire and
Hmm.
and also what you let go of, because I also think that what's not healthy is opening your closet and seeing a lot of things that you can't wear or don't want to wear, or and they're just hanging there. Again, back to feng shui. It doesn't matter who gave it to you, it doesn't matter what you paid for it. I think clearing your space, there's always someone else you can give it to, donate it, whatever. But like clearing your closet, making it really meaningful and purposeful, and letting
Hmm.
go of things that you're not or you're not going to be again. It's hard to
Hmm.
do that because we all
Hmm.
hold on to that. Those are the pain points of being a woman and aging into the next phase of our lives. Embrace the next phase and find those things that really elevate and serve you well. So again, I think it's more being more deliberate about your purchases and giving yourself taking a little extra time for yourself. It's like,
Hmm.
shopping. I mean, there are people that like shopping is, as you said, a hobby, and they're out on every Saturday, browsing stores. And then there's people that are really looking to find their wardrobe and sometimes not taking the time. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be every week. It could be more like a very deliberate seasonal thing, or it could be a very deliberate life cycle thing. To
Hmm.
your point, like when you were in this recovery state and you were seeing a new Avanti, it's like, okay, so who am I? Who do I want to be? And how
Right.
do I want to pivot that? And then taking your time and, maybe go into a store and not make the decision the same day. Go in, look at things, try them on, take pictures of yourself, go home, think about it. Like, how does that? And then if what when those things keep pulling you and drawing you, that's the right piece or thing. And less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, what I was imaging as you were saying that of clearing the space is that really you're thinking about it's almost like this idea of digestion, keeping what you need
Mm-hmm.
and getting rid of what you don't, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what came to mind when you were saying that is that, really looking at this as an act of digestive health, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel when I go into my closet and there's so many things that are piled in there, but they're just taking up space and clogging energy and they're creating toxins, right? In my environment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just relating it back to Ayurveda and digestion, but I almost feel like that's a big thing for me personally. When I went through this process, 2 months ago of really clearing out my closet, I took a lot of things out. I mean, probably 50% of my wardrobe because I've had such extreme changes in my body. And I also realized that a lot of things just weren't going to make me feel good and weren't making me feel good. I actually tried on
Mm-hmm.
everything in my closet. It was a painful exercise, but really, really helpful.
But that's the investment I keep talking about. You had to do that, even though it was painful. You
Right.
invested in yourself. So it isn't even about spending money. It's more
Hmm.
about investing your time.
Yes.
And, another thing, Auntie, you made me think about is like, how we talk about like live in the moment. Like sometimes you got to let go of the past and think and be in the moment and think about the future. A lot of what we consume and have in our space, whether it's our physical environment or our closets, is they're tied to a past thing, a past life, past moment. And, as you were saying, like clearing your closet, I was thinking, we all hold on to those things because they have some emotional tag to them. And sometimes letting that go just feels so liberating. I know for myself, I try to do one of your podcasts recently I listened to was about clearing. I'm sorry, I don't recall her name. I so appreciated what she said was do it in small bites. So for you did your whole closet. That's great. But, maybe one week you go through your sweater drawer. Another week you go through your shoes. Another week you go through do it. I found that helpful because I'm so overscheduled. I don't always have the time to take a couple of days and really dive in. But I do think it's that's the kind of emotional bondage, just pulls you down into a whole nother person because we do evolve and we are different people at different stages of our lives. And we should be allowed to be that new person. And if you're looking in your closet and you see this dress from 20 years ago and you're like, but do I ever really want to wear that dress? Even if it's the same size, it's not about the fit. It just might be a different stage of your life, a different person.
Right. Yeah. It feels like what you're saying, and I'm hearing this over and over again as a thread, is that it comes back to awareness of just being aware of taking the time to be aware of how do you feel in something? Where are you in your life? How do you want to show up? Who is the person you are that you are becoming? Right. And then taking a thoughtful look at how am I showing up? Does what I have to clothe myself reflect all of those things rather than just being numb and sort of not considering those things?
You nailed it 100%. That's everything. Self-awareness, but also just having that level of kindness to yourself. Because I do, again, the destructive side of fashion is I don't think it's kind. And I think it just, sometimes we say such harsh things to ourselves because we can't wear certain things or we, whatever it is. So I think being kind to ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think these are all amazing. I know that we're coming up on time. So I just want to ask you one last question that I always ask all of my guests, which is if I offer up the phrase to catalyze healing, what comes up for you?
I think the idea of slowing everything down and just sort of really trying to stay more in the moment, because I think that's the way to true health, just being calmer, still, finding more stillness.
Maria, thank you so much for this conversation. It was so thought-provoking and interesting, and I so appreciate you being in my life and you helping me through a really, really interesting time of life and helping me show up in the world the way that I want to. So thank you, Maria.
Well, Avanti, you inspire me beyond. I can't wait till you get your next book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks again for listening to The Healing Catalyst. If you love what you heard, please hit follow and pass it along to a friend. And if you're feeling really inspired, please rate and review so that others can find this podcast more easily. To learn more, head to avantikumarsingh.com. And to connect with me directly, find me on Instagram at avantikumarsingh. I'll be back next week and hope that you will be too. Until then, remember, with the right catalyst, you have the power to activate your own healing, because healing starts within.